It's a vision of place, common vision these days. I mean, after all, during this holiday season, either we are planning on going home, we're hosting people in our home, or for whatever reason, we know we're not going to be able to make it home. That happened to Shannon and I now almost 21 years ago. She was 8 months pregnant, and we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and we planned on going home for Christmas. And her doctor didn't like that idea. So we had to make a decision. Do we take the 9-hour drive to Louisiana against doctor's orders, or do we stay in our little 400 square foot apartment by ourselves on Christmas? Well, my spouse didn't feel like driving 9 hours, 8 months pregnant. So we stayed home, and well, we stayed in the home we have made. And it was an interesting Christmas, right? We didn't have our parents, we didn't have our siblings, we didn't have our nieces and nephews. It was just her and I. Our friends had left to go home, and we were left behind. And yet, it's one of the memorable Christmases for us together. In some ways, that Christmas made a home for us. And out of that home we made, we have created a place for our own children and for our lives together. See, home changes with time. Now, often we make assumptions that that place that we call home is a good place. I'm sure you have stories in your own life about the ways in which maybe home wasn't a good place for you. But if it's really home, then it is really a good place. Maybe you experience a house where things were not well. Maybe you experience a family that was dysfunctional. But for our purposes today, if it's home, then it needs to be a safe place. A place where you feel valued and beloved. A home is a place where you feel oriented, and it's solid ground for your life. A home is a place of imagination and possibility. It's a place that allows you to be at the best kind of place. That's home. So the prophet today, on this third Sunday of Advent, reminds us of home. He actually finally gets there after a vision of destruction and hopelessness and despair. He gets there after telling the Israelites that he recognizes that things are not going well and that things look horrible. And then all of a sudden we went with that moment of hopelessness for us. The prophet then takes a deep breath and has a vision of home like no other. They were no longer going to be suffering like they had suffered. They were no longer going to be without like they have been without. They were no longer going to be struggling like they had struggled for generations. Now they were going to find that safe, beloved place of beauty and grandeur and joy. The question becomes, were they going to be able to make that adjustment within themselves? Were they, after so long, going to be able to see this place for what it truly was? I mean, homes are always a bit imperfect, aren't they? And yet they do exist even today in our own lives. And so I'm wondering, as we continue preparing our hearts and minds for Christmas and the celebration of a God who breaks into history and meets us where we are and then paves the way for our healing, our wholeness, our integration, our salvation. As we prepare, I wonder what home will look for you. What home do you need in this moment? Have you been feeling a bit disoriented, lost, Have you been feeling diseased, hopeless even, in the midst of the celebrations and the joy and the music and the lights? Have you been wondering if there is goodness and grace and mercy for you or for the world as you know it? Today we lean on this prophet. Zephaniah is not necessarily the most popular of them, but we consider what it's like to feel that disorientation, that lostness, that despair. And then we hope. But we don't hope as ones who do not know. We hope as ones who can at least see it, imagine it, and then we together begin to prepare a space, just like we decorate for this time of the year. We begin to prepare a space. What does safety look like? What does joy look like? What does belovedness look like? What kind of spaces do we create within our own homes itself, but also in the places that we work and play and visit? How do we create these spaces for humanity that we encounter day to day to experience that kind of flourishing, that kind of joy, that kind of peace, that kind of hope, that kind of comfort, that kind of strength? See, this would not be celebration if it doesn't transform us in some way, beyond the gifts giving and beyond the way in which we kind of hype it up this time of the year. In real human ways, this would not be celebration if we don't do the reflection needed so that our hearts are transformed, so that we encounter this Christ in the day-to-day of our lives, in that we then take that presence, that love, that incarnation, and make home for it. Just like Mary and Joseph made home for it long ago in a stable. Just like Magi walked a long ways to visit that home. Just like shepherds in the field went and said, oh, here it is, great news of great joy. Just like that, we preparing a place in our hearts, in our homes, in our workplaces, in the marketplaces. We bearers of that incarnation of love. We hope makers to all that we encounter, good news sharers. We God's people doing the work that only we can do. God's people doing the work that we can do, making home. Just like the ancient prophet foretold long ago, making home for you and for the world. So, people of God, First-Plymouthers, let us make home a vision of hope and peace and solidarity and kinship and goodness and grace and mercy and compassion and justice and peace. A vision of salvation. No matter what the past has been like, no matter what today feels like. Oh, what a vision. Amen.